Yeah, unlisted. Good. I'm continuing my tradition of being unprofessional with these. All right. So this is episode 24 of PODLOMATIC, the show in air quotes where I talk to fellow creators, notable creators, controversial creators, pretty much anybody who dares to put pen to paper and put their ideas out into the world. So today I have another special guest. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. I go by Mr. Pumpkinface. I make comics for people to read and hopefully enjoy, but I also enjoy if they don't enjoy them.
The controversy aspect.
Yeah.
When did you get started? Well, publicly, I'm sure you've been drawing comics your whole life, but well, tell the whole biography. When did you make your debut? And
well, I started drawing comics for a nickel back when I was in elementary school.
Cool.
Back then, I did like Sonic the Hedgehog and Star Fox comics for friends and other kids. That was my first foray into professional comics. I have been off and on with webcomics since about 2000. I've made nothing notable because I was just kind of doing it for myself. And then I saw the rise of this sort of edgy comics world and decided that might be fun to get into. So I started Mr. Pumpkinface in October of last year. So the project is not quite a year old at this point.
I see. Would you say then, because I mean, that's something I definitely relate to, is working in the shadows for many, many years and never, I guess, it's like hitting the ignition, but it never catches and the engine never turns on. But so you would say that aside from the content changing, was it the right place, right time kind of thing? It caught fire. The content caught fire.
Yeah, I'd say so. I created 3 strips and posted them all on one night on Twitter, and decided I just created the account and then went to bed. Woke up the next morning and was surprised to see that a bunch of people had actually been engaging with them, which surprised me since I have a little bit of experience in branding, and that's not usually how you don't usually just post something on a completely fresh account with no followers and no clout and wake up the next morning to find that people have been liking it and sharing it. But so it kind of started off that way, and I figured, okay, well, maybe I'll keep doing this because it seems like there's a hunger for this kind of thing out there right now, and there really weren't a lot of people doing it at the time, and I've noticed that there's quite a bit more now. The field generally has grown quite a bit larger.
How would you define the field or a genre, let's say?
That's an interesting question because it seems like it's one of those things like the Gnostics are defined by the Christian haters of them. So that I think that's kind of similar to this group of people is we've been largely defined by the people that hate us, which is kind of an interesting place to be because then you end up with quite an eclectic group, because there's a lot of people out there who are doing these comics that don't, I wouldn't call them right-wing, but people call them right-wing and try to fit them into this group, and it kind of forces the people that they identify as these evil right-wing comics creators to galvanize together. So you end up with a pretty diverse group of people who make a pretty diverse set of content, which makes it more fun.
Yeah, I've noticed, actually, having talked to a bunch of creators who make, let's say, edgy content, I realize they're all over the political spectrum. But if one was to try to, well, one of their strategies is to try to lump as many people together into a single category as possible in order to target them. So to say that this is a conservative or alt-right or nasty comment, nasties, it makes it easier to put everybody into a single category, and just basically anyone who's not us.
Hmm.
So I've found that there's quite a wide range of different beliefs and positions, but the thing that seems to be hitting the anvil while it's hot in this case is, I guess, cracking jokes that you're not allowed to crack.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
yeah, I would say so. And I think the people who are involved in this, the comics creators, kind of feed off of that energy too.
Mhm.
Because I know that's part of my nature is just a little bit of naughtiness, mischievousness.
Mhm.
I like it when people are caught by something that I say or do creatively, not so much in my personal life, but creatively.
Mhm.
And you remember that, what was it, that Twitter account a couple months ago, the conservative art,
Mhm.
um, bad conservative art, I think it was called. They've kind of stopped attacking the comics lately because I think they realized they were truly were an aggregate, helping people find these different comics creators. But they came after really good comics,
Mhm.
which is a guy who he just makes like weird stuff, like really really off the wall kind of stuff. And they posted one of his comics, and all the comments were saying, uh, there's nothing right wing about this. Like I don't, even people who are legitimately following the account and were, looking to hate watch Ben Garrison or something.
Mhm.
They were saying, I don't know what's right wing about this. So that's kind of a funny happenstance about how these people who just kind of like to make weird stuff or silly stuff or kind of be a bit provocative um, end up being lumped together, and then it kind of creates this funny little world that I think people are increasingly enjoying, both creators and consumers.
Mhm. One of the factors I've also noticed, I'm looking at parallels, let's say, between these creators, is they've had to use pseudonyms. Um, there's a lot of I want to ask about that, but I'm also noticing that let's say if this is a game of King of the Hill, and what I might define as the far left is the King of the Hill right now. So what they say culturally is the rules, and if you break the rules, you're one of the outsiders. Um, if they, for instance, found out who any of the provocative creators were, um, well, let's say, how am I trying to phrase this question? What do you think is the need for the anonymity? Will it ever be shed? Is there a need for it? Um,
I think there's a need for it. It's fine that some people want to be public, but I also think there is a need for anonymity because most of us who do this stuff aren't losers. Like we have jobs and families and stuff, so uh, there's something to risk there with the way that the left likes to attack people and get them fired from their jobs because as we've seen from Nike, that comic that you so eloquently did about Kaepernick, an entire you know corporation is willing to bend its knee to a single social justice warrior and completely nix an entire line of merchandise uh, simply because a guy says something retarded about it. And that's kind of the world that we're living in right now. So I think the anonymity is actually pretty important. And also, personally for me, it's fun to be anonymous because that's how I remember the internet when things were better in a lot of ways, which would be like the early 2000s. Um, you could be anonymous, and that was okay. Uh, it wasn't really nobody came after you. Uh, but if you wanted to be anonymous, that was kind of the nature of the internet at the time, and I kind of liked the internet better back then. So this is comfortable for me to be anonymous, and I don't know if that's really the same with other people who are doing it, but it's probably because of the doxing that most of us do it.
for sure. I've always been tempted to do really, really edgy stuff, but then I thought I would have to do a pen name, and then I was
Mhm.
thinking I, I would have to do a lot of extra work to mask my style. Um, like after my Reddit stuff happened, I was thinking, well, it would be really interesting if I could take like my comic is still at the #1 spot for some freak reason. And it would be amazing if I created a pseudonym and took the #1 spot from myself and then never told anybody.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be quite an experiment for
um,
you, honestly, to make something different enough. That could actually be pretty fun.
but masking one's style is another issue, I think, because like
Mhm.
if for instance I wanted to go anonymous, or if someone who was anonymous wanted to go public and say I actually want to make a comics career, what if somebody noticed, if I drew a certain, a hand pose in this certain way that I draw hands, people would be like, wait a second, this is him. Let's get him.
Yeah.
um,
Well, you just need to go to Cal Arts and learn to draw
like
like that.
the same. It's really funny. I remember I think the CalArts style was because of Brian Lee O'Malley on Scott Pilgrim. Uh, I think it was after him that they all started copying his style. But I thought that was funny because he studies and copies Japanese artists. There's this weird genealogy. If you trace it back, it's like
And
they're
then wasn't anime kind of inspired by Betty Boop?
yeah, that was one of the yeah, because if Osamu Tezuka was the god of manga considered, I guess. So he took influences from Disney, of course, and then Betty Boop would have been way, way back. I think what was she, 20s, I think.
Hmm.
It's yeah, if you look at cartooning as a sort of DNA chart, it's funny to look at where the CalArts style is now, uh, and how it got to where it is. But I guess the most animators from over there in those schools try to do what's visually appealing, A, and what's easy to produce, B. But unfortunately, that just means all their art looks the same.
Hmm.
Um, well, I actually do want to ask you about art later, but let's see. There's a there's a lot of different directions I can go, but I'm curious to continue asking about. Well, actually, let me ask about art for a brief time.
Sure.
You were drawing comics before you have your current persona, let's say. Do you think you'll ever go back to doing non like comics that aren't in this genre, let's say?
Um, I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
Mm.
This is something that's been able to fit into my existing life pretty well. So um, it's convenient for me to do this, and the amount of time it takes to produce a comic in this style kind of fits pretty well.
Mhm. How long did
Stuff I was
I'm
doing
sorry.
before was kind of more of actual comic format with dynamic paneling and uh, action and all that kind of stuff, which it takes quite a bit of time to do.
Yeah. I've also found in the quest for going viral, let's say, um, quality almost, I don't mean quality in terms of talent, but quality like XKCD, for example, is really popular and it's just stick figures.
Hmm.
The comics that catch fire are not necessarily the ones that are drawn the best. So maybe a lot of cartoonists like myself, we try to overcompensate.
Hmm.
Like I can't get noticed unless I, work 20 hours on a single panel. But maybe it's the content. What do you think is part of that alchemy that makes a comic go viral and subsequent comics? Like how do you keep hitting that awesome like when you post a comic, it does really well.
Well, that's a good question because I actually consider myself to be a pretty good artist, which is, I know, is kind of a weird thing for artists to say. But I can draw, and I enjoy drawing complex things, anatomy and stuff like that. But part of this comic, it was intentional on my part to not do that because I know how easy it is for me to get lost in the details, which I'm sure you really would too, because you're a very talented artist. Um, so, and that's something people have criticized me about, which I think is funny. They're like every now and then I get a brigade of people from, I don't know where they're, honestly, I don't know where they're coming from. Could be Reddit, could be Discord servers. I don't really care, but it's just funny to laugh at them. But they show up and they'll start criticizing the fact that I don't draw noses, and that's hilarious to me because that's a willful choice on my part. It's not like I can't draw noses. I just don't for this comic because keeping it simple and pithy does help with the virality in the sphere that we exist in now. And you don't see a lot of comics that trend that, you know, are super detailed or have a lot of, I guess you could say, artistic integrity in them. Most of the comics that do well, say on Facebook, kind of the normal sort of stuff you might see your aunt share, is very, very simple. And I can't name names, honestly, because a lot of these comics are kind of, you don't really see the names of them. You just see the work because it's all social media, you know?
Yeah.
But there's like the guy who has the comics that always end with the little blob saying, "Oh no." And then there's a guy that draws the aliens who kind of relate to human experiences from like a,
yes.
What would you call that? It's almost like a medical terminology, but stuff like that is not, you know, it's really, it's squiggly looking lines and stuff, and that seems to be what people like. So that kind of works.
I tend to call that low resolution art. Like in
That's a
the
good
sense,
definition.
yeah, like high resolution in the sense, even if anyone's a gamer, you know, high resolution art takes a lot of time to render, but a low resolution piece of art, you know, is instant. So for an artist, I can draw a sketch at very low resolution and it'll still communicate the idea that I'm trying to communicate. I can draw a comic really fast, add some word balloons, you get it. But then there's questions like cartooning, especially the kinds of cartooning that we do, and like comic strips, let's say, is all about subtraction and refinement, distillation. That's the word I'm looking for. Trying to use the minimum amount of lines needed to draw some grass in the background. You'll do 3 slashes in the background just to say, okay, there's some grass there. Just use your imagination. To go after a creator or a cartoonist because of the way their art looks is almost, it's like if I'm in an argument with someone and I'm arguing about politics or something, and then I say, oh yeah, well, you dress stupid, your nose is dumb. It's like, I'm just looking for something. I can't beat you in your argument anymore. So it's almost like admitting I give up. I have nothing left to argue, but I still want to fight you, so you look stupid. Do you think a lot of these critiques of your work, when they go after your art style, they don't have a rebuttal to your theses?
Well, I don't know. They might, and there's good criticism to be had out there. I don't know if I've really seen it yet. Honestly, I think I'm more of a harsh critic of my own work, not in terms of the art, but in terms of the themes and the content and the writing. Than the people who think they hate me, because their arguments are just, you know, the stereotypical stuff like, oh, that's racist. You know, that's a well, like my recent comic is about an alt-right dog whistle. That's an alt-right dog whistle, and I just like, I have better arguments against my own stuff than I've heard from these people. And I think that's been the case with you as well, like that one that you did with the guy doing the circle game, which is something I used to play with my friends in high school.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just that there's a generational thing here, because I think you and I are probably around the same age bracket. You know, grew up in the 90s. And you know, you would call your friends fag, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just, so, you know, it didn't mean anything. It's not like you were trying to be hateful. You were just being stupid.
Yeah,
and the circle game was like that too. Like everyone misinterpreted your comic, thinking you're trying to I don't know, tease them about an alt-right dog whistle, which was supposed to be the OK sign, which is all hilarious and made up by 4chan anyway. But that's not even what you were intending, and they got mad. So
Yeah.
there's
Well,
not really much you can do about it.
They were looking for an excuse.
That's what it is. They're looking for it. It's like that. Like I get dopamine by posting a comic and seeing the response. You know, seeing if it does well. I get dopamine out of that. I think these people get dopamine out of insulting or trying to find, trying to argue. I guess it's like that negative clout or whatever that they're trying to get a response out of. This guy who made this comic that did well or something. Like they're trying to siphon the energy off of that. It's kind of like a psychic vampire. They're trying to siphon some of the energy that I get off of it because they can't get that kind of energy themselves.
I think one of the driving forces behind their ideology is envy. Maybe you are gaining the attention that they crave.
That's probably it.
And when you say,
like a lot of these people can't do this, they don't know how to brand. They don't know. They don't know how to promote themselves without looking like an asshole. They don't know how to draw. They don't know how to write. They don't know how to do any of this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying like I'm great at this stuff. Honestly, I'm not the best out there from the people in this sphere. But these people can't even do that. They can't even come up to my level, which is kind of the way that I see it. So they just, it's like you said.
In gaming terms, I use gaming terms a lot, so I hope you'll forgive me. We have something called nerfing. Are you familiar with that?
Is that like where you shoot your own team or something?
Oh no, that would be team killing or something like that. But
okay.
I'm sorry to. This is relevant, I promise. There's nerfing and buffing. So nerfing is something like if I'm too strong in a game, like if it's Street Fighter and my Hadouken's too strong, they might nerf it and they give it different properties to make it not so effective and abusable. So if, let's say, a cartoonist hypothetically starts doing too well, gaining too many followers and is gaining too much influence, they have to be nerfed by the opponents to say, no, this is unfair. He's gaining too much strength. We can't beat him. I have seen firsthand that these groups will jump after anybody who seems to be gaining too much strength without permission. Sorry for the noise, by the way.
Oh, that's fine.
I've seen this repeatedly happen, and I see it happening with the guys who are making the forbidden comics, let's say. They have to be quarantined. So we saw that happen with that Twitter handle, Bad Conservative Art, and it had the opposite effect, the Streisand effect. The more that they criticized us, I gained 1,000 followers in like one night or something, because they said, "Oh, look at this terrible comic. They're making fun of, blue-haired whatevers." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I've never gained so many people in one night. Thank you so much." And they tried to take my name off of it, which only made it even more sexy. But I've seen, I guess, back to the note of marketing and virality and all that stuff, I think one of the biggest growth, like that steroid injection that gets somebody popular is drama, and let's come to their aid. Someone is being treated unfairly. We have to go help them. Let's give them follows and shares and retweets. Do you think that's part of it?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. I was one of those 1,000 followers. That's where I found you because I think just recently before that account had been attacking me pretty heavily and consistently, which I don't know what it is that makes you a target like that. There's a couple people who, I don't know, I guess they feel like they don't want to go after someone like Stone Toss or something. So they'll try to come after me. There seems to be, or I've seen it happen to you too, and other people. But it does. There's that Streisand effect, and then there creates. That's kind of like that galvanizing I was talking about at the beginning. That these bigger accounts that don't like us for whatever reason will start to attack, and then that gets everybody else's attention, and they start jumping to the aid of that person or that account or that work. And then before you know it, you end up with 1,000 followers in one night. And I think that has a lot to do with the that's a part of branding that certain corporations have used, but not many, because it is a gambit. And that's why I think it might be easier for people who make edgy content, openly edgy content, to use their enemies to amass support, because it's easy to have enemies when you're making this kind of content. So if you look at like a brand like Wendy's, right? On Twitter, they do this thing where they roast their fans, and it's a good campaign because it makes people laugh. They like the fact that Wendy is throwing shade at them. So and they get the attention from like this brand with 1 million followers or whatever. So that's kind of fun. And I think on our end, on our level, it's also fun, but it's also more dangerous, which can make it even more fun.
Dangerous because we're individuals who can be targeted.
Correct. We're individuals who can be targeted, and we have something to lose. Whereas, Wendy's not going to do anything to you, but Antifa will.
Yeah, that's one of the things we could talk about. But I guess the culture war itself seems to be a marketing tool now for some of us, where if we make ourselves a battlefield, and then they call their friends to come fight us, and then we call for friends to come fight with us, it's like the battlefield is now part of it was one of the scenes where a mighty battle took place, and everybody wants a piece of the glory, I suppose. Like, one of the best examples, one of the funniest things I've ever seen on the internet was the "He Will Not Divide Us" campaign. I will never forget it. And it was like their heroes came into existence out of nowhere, seemingly overnight. And legends, and these are, this guy's got a name and he will always be remembered. And I guess what happens is like, oh, this guy made a comic and now it created this giant comments section. I don't know, I'm kind of spinning my tires talking about this, I guess, but
that's fine.
I think it's fascinating to see how the culture war has become such a potent ground. Like any war in general, they say, heroes and villains arise out of nowhere. And sometimes the only way that heroes and villains can come to light is by, be participating in this giant, glorious fight that will always be remembered. But if these heroes existed in peacetime, nobody would know their names.
That's correct.
Like, I can't remember the name of him. He was a sniper and he fought the communists way back in the day. He was like northeastern European, and he was like the best sniper ever who existed. And he was so good because he shot animals like on his farm when he was a kid, since he was a kid. And but like we never would have learned his name if it wasn't for the fighting. But I suppose because we now exist in a culture war, names are being written in the halls of history, I guess.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I fully expect to end up in a Vox piece at some point. That's something I've been waiting for, is the moment when Vox or Huffington Post or something sends a journalist into the dark world of far right comics, because they are growing, and they're growing fast and they're growing hard. Which is a good soundbite, but they're going to come after him at some point, and it's probably going to be something about, primarily with Stone Toss at the center, and then they're going to latch on to these other creators as well. And I'm fully expecting that to become a part of my life at some point. which is both scary and exciting.
Mhm. I suppose they would start coming after these creators if and when they decided they're too much of a threat and they have to be attacked. But surely by now they know. Like for instance, what happened with Crowder and what's his face from? Was it? It wasn't Fox. He's from BuzzFeed, right?
Yeah, it was Vox.
Carlos Maza.
Yeah, because what do you call him? The Lispy queer from Vox, I think is what he.
I can't remember. Yeah, but they've been quarreling for years. But finally, this guy decided to try to deplatform Crowder, and it backfired. And what I think has been the most surprising, pleasantly surprising result of all this fighting and attempted character assassinations is that we've realized the right and center have way more people on those sides, but they're silent most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when they're being attacked or they see someone on their side being attacked that this giant groundswell comes out of nowhere. It's like the earth itself coming to life, and it's like, oh crap, there's way more of them than we thought there were.
Yeah.
So
Which
your
is what
guys
happened during the election too. Oh, I'm sorry, you're formulating the point.
Go on.
Oh, that's it.
Well, like I am consistently surprised. Like I don't pick sides really. I'm just, a traveler on this earth in this place of time, and I'm just like I'm like an observer. I consider myself, but it's fun and interesting to see how, in order to piss off conservatives, you have to really piss them off, and then they will just stomp you to death, and then they'll go back to minding their own business, I think. Whereas I've seen the far left, they've actually done something that I guess religious conservatives used to do back in the 90s when we were growing up. It's like the satanic panic and stuff like that. They're trying to ban Dungeons and Dragons and magic and all that stuff, because it had magic spells in it. Therefore, it's going to open the door to like magic and Satanism or something for the kids. Well, back then it was silly. It was considered silly. Like, oh, these moms are trying to protect their children, so we have no TV in our house because TV is the devil and all that stuff. And now I see this kind of weird non-religious censoring thing happening from the far left, saying, no, we have to keep the kids safe. We have to purify the kids, which ironically, includes, dressing them in dragon stuff.
Yeah, I would still say it's religious.
It is, right? It's they don't have a holy book, I suppose. But what do you think is their ideology?
Evil.
But they see it as good, though.
Yeah, well, that's isn't that that's what I thought was the nature of evil, was the inversion of values, and it is similar in a lot of ways. It is funny to see how the people who, like you were saying back in the 90s, where like these stodgy conservatives were trying to ruin all the fun. That's kind of the impression that you got. And then now the most famous, Republican in the world, probably the most famous person in the world, which is Trump, is constantly going on Twitter, just joking about things and saying stupid shit, not really caring. And they can't stand that, I think, because in a lot of ways, that's what they were supposed to be doing, or that's how they identified themselves. So then it kind of spins them off into this really confused state of identity, and that's why they're playing all this identity politics, because they don't know who they are, they don't know what they're doing, but they know that they need to be doing something. And I guess that's kind of Jordan Peterson was saying, like, don't try to change the world until you clean your room. These are a lot of people with dirty rooms, and they think that they have an ideology. And I think by what they say and the way that they act, like I just tweeted a thing about identity politics, where it's got a video of these, like, the person describes it by saying white guys holding Black Lives Matter flag while harassing a black man for wearing a MAGA hat. They don't even know what they're doing anymore. They don't know whose side they're on. As far as they know, the only thing that defines them, again, is their enemies. They know that the person that I call a Nazi is kind of, that's who defines them, which is really sad. And I think maybe that's why the right has so much more of that organic power, that organic quiet power, is because they're a bunch of people who actually know who they are to some extent, and that gives you a lot of spiritual power. So, which is what those other people lack. They're kind of defined by the people that they call Nazis, which is a sad state of affairs.
That's kind of fascinating. So a lot of these, for instance, Antifa, they dress up in anonymous outfits because they maybe don't have identities of their own. They want to be a part of a giant cluster of people, do actions that they can get away with, and then blend back into the cluster. That is interesting to think about. What I would include as part of that group, who don't know who they are, but they know who they want to attack. I think what they're doing is they're just angry at the world, and they're looking for an excuse to hurt somebody, anybody. And when they go to college or if they hang out online, they say, oh, there's a group of people who are doing evil, and I need to make a name for myself. So I'm going to jump into this fight and turn myself into a hero so that finally I will know why I exist and what my purpose in this world is. And so you get some shithead who ends up, clocking someone over the head or beating up Andy No, and, pretending like that was a good thing.
Yeah, parents need to be better, honestly.
I suppose that's what it is. But also I would argue that the schools are breeding grounds for these types of ideologies, and maybe they've been operating for years without anybody checking in on it.
Yeah, I think that's probably an overlook by boomer-minded people, which is to say that they think, when they were young, school is just what you did. You went to school, you got your education, you went to college, you got a job. So then that's what they tell their kids to do. But that's not the world anymore. They don't actually teach practical working skills in colleges, and high schools are glorified daycares where the teachers are really just trying to keep the kids from stabbing and shooting each other. And so then you end up with these people who are sending their kids into these indoctrination camps, which is all schools really are these days, public schools. And they're ignorant of this. They don't know about it. They don't know what they're doing. And they end up with kids who become communists because the schools have radicalized them. The public schools taught them how to behave like cogs in a machine. And then the colleges gave them the ideological firmament, the Alinsky and that kind of stuff, the radicalization. They get introduced to all these different radical groups in college, and then you wind up with the mess we have today.
One of the interesting, part of their criticisms reminds me of the term, it takes one to know one. And what I've noticed is that they don't like it when, for instance, a comics artist uses they call it dog whistling and all kinds of secret messages and propaganda, indoctrination tactics. They don't like it when that's used against them. So I love the idea of, for instance, somebody might put a hidden joke inside the joke itself, or here's the seemingly innocuous comic, but there's another meaning, and they don't like it. I've noticed, like, the reasons that they went after me was because they thought I was hiding messages in my content. But I've also heard, for instance, in researching Stone Toss, when I interviewed him last week, I listened to a video trying to tear him apart. And the guy was, a communist, leftist, far leftist, or something like that. And he freely admitted that he is a propagandist. And he realized that that's probably what Stone Toss was trying to do. And that was one of the reasons why he was going after him. It's like, he's too powerful. He's using my tactics against me.
Yeah, I'm often surprised. I don't think that they don't have a point. Because I am often blown away by how powerful my brand has become in the amount of time that it's been around. It's shocking that I can make a tweet, that just says something like "based monk," that posts is just reposting another post of a monk that died in his 80s who never met a woman, and that gets like hundreds of likes. So I don't think they're wrong. They're not wrong that these people are a threat to them in a lot of ways, in terms of propaganda, in terms of
influence,
which is magic. They're not wrong, so I do get that, and I recognize that. And of course there are other accounts as well that have that kind of influence and power over the minds of a good number of people, an increasing number. I think that's the thing that they, like you've been saying, that they're threatened by, is not just the power that these accounts currently have, but the power they could have.
It's like a game of tug of war.
Yeah, which is one of Stone's best comics.
Yes, exactly. The one where the Antifa people are pulling on the same side as Mr. Monopoly.
Yeah, and the libertarian ends up with the fascist on his side.
Very strange.
It's true, and that's actually one thing that is funny, because I identified as a libertarian. I was even a card-carrying member in the early 2000s, back when I was young and dumb, and it's, in a lot of ways, I do identify with that. I do just kind of want people to be free, to be left alone, and to kind of do their own thing. And if they want to engage in the space, then they need to be prepared for the repercussions. But then you end up, I see a lot of people in my comments and stuff that say things that I would never say, and it's just kind of funny to find yourself in that position. That I consider myself a libertarian ideologically in many ways, but you end up with a lot of true right-wing support.
I would like to ask about that soon. On a quick note, that we talked about the tug of war, one of the other factions working together that I find unbelievably bizarre is the LGBT people and Islam.
Yeah, what's with that?
They could not be more ideologically opposed. And somehow their mutual hate for America and white men, I suppose, is, I don't know, like, do they not realize that once the fighting stops, they are going to turn on each other? Is it not clear who's going to win that fight?
I think that is more of an oversight of the good nature of the LGBT people.
They think that by being nice to them, the fighting is going to stop.
They think that the Islamic side is authentic in their support, which is, it's part of their doctrine to not be.
Well, look at what happened with Linda Sarsour and the Women's March.
Yeah, that's the confusing thing about it. It's really one side is taking advantage of the good nature of the other. And then obviously once that side, if they were to become victorious in whatever they consider victory to be, it wouldn't be so much the two sides turning on each other. It'd be the one side turning on the other.
Yeah, I suppose that's what it is. They can't beat, let's say, America proper by itself. They have to slowly start infecting little communities. And only when they've properly weakened and destroyed their enemy, then they'll clean up the rest. Because sometimes, like if we talk about tactics and war and all that stuff back in the day, you would sometimes work with another country, get to learn their tactics and get to know how they fight and get to know what their resources are like, fight with them, and then when the fighting stops, you can turn on them and easily annex them after the fighting is finished.
And that's something these LGBT people, LGBT, they don't know, because they don't have a legacy. Islam has a thousands+ year legacy and history of this sort of thing. So they have ancient traditions that formulate the bulk of their behavior, which the LGBT crowd does not understand. They don't have that traditional background. So their strategies are very based on emotion, and they're very contemporaneous, which is it's a weakness in the long run.
So they don't think long term. They're just thinking in terms of short victories, little social progressive. Yeah, we've made progress by changing this thing that was once this other way. Now we've changed it. We can put ourselves in the books of history.
Right. Yeah.
We created drag kids. This is our legacy.
Yeah, basically. And that's going to be going soon enough anyway.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see in a few years. Like, I hear Joe Rogan talk about this all the time with guys like Peterson. Like, what's going to happen to all the kids who are going through hormone therapy? Are they going to sue their parents?
Probably.
That's very interesting. I'm actually very curious to see how that plays out in a few years.
It's really sad.
Yeah, being able to make that's not reversible. That's like a life sentence. If you change your mind, it's like the Michael Jackson problem. He was messed up from childhood because his parents, gave him this life, like the Mozart life. You're just going to be this talented celebrity and you're not going to have a childhood anymore. And, he basically went cuckoo in his adult life.
Yeah, that's a weird situation. I don't know if I really want to get into that, but I do.
All right, I'm sorry. We don't have
That's okay.
I have a note here really quick before we change topics. Motivations for social justice. In regards to the Nike thing, do you think it's just money for companies like them, or is it influence? Like they say, for instance, in the hierarchy of a society, let's say you've got the merchants, above them you've got the lawmakers, and above the lawmakers you have the priests. And I think what the SJW, what's the word I'm looking for? They're trying to be the priests of this society. They want to guide the laws. They want to basically have control of pretty much everything, including thought. What do you think how did Nike bend so quickly?
That's very perceptive. And that's interesting because you're kind of applying a modern phenomenon to a traditional structure. But it is true that seems to be the case, that the merchant class has completely capitulated to their priest, which would be Kaepernick, who represents this social justice ideal. And that's something to think about. I actually had a comic planned involving Kaepernick that had something similar to that. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it.
Sure.
I mean, as much as societies change and technology changes, I don't think this species called humanity, our brains have not really updated very much in the past few thousand years. I think what I call is like the operating system has changed. So depending on your time and place, your operating system might be different, but the hardware of our brains are the same. We look for hierarchies, and that's pretty much non-arguable, as much as some people try to break hierarchies and say they don't exist. There are certain things like religion that, even though the brain, we can claim we're agnostic or atheist or something like that, but we still have something in that slot that we call religion. And some people who don't have anything there replace religion or the church with the state. So you end up with like communist Russia, where the state became their church. And I guess in our modern times, postmodern, I should say, when it's very much about deconstruction and what happens if I move this thing here? What happens if I destroy this fence? It's very experimental because the old ways have been falling away. And now we're kind of trying, maybe failing, to rebuild what is humanity? What is the brain? What is this? What are these operating systems, and can they be engineered, improved? Sometimes they take it too far, I think.
Man, do you have like an IQ of 140 or something?
No, man, I just smoke a lot of weed.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I don't smoke at all. No, I'm just a guy in his living room.
I don't know how you can just like go on like that, man. I didn't even follow most of that.
I'm sorry. It's like a tinfoil hat thing. We can talk about it.
I did think about something.
Yeah.
Okay, it's gone now. Forget it.
Shoot. Tinfoil hat?
It had something to do with Alex Jones. I know that much.
Yes. That's actually That's the direction I go in. I mean, he's crazy, but he's funny.
I don't think he's as crazy as people think he is.
No, but I do think he's putting on an act sometimes. Like, did you see him on Rogan recently?
Oh yeah, man, that was hilarious. That's like the best Joe Rogan.
Put me in a headlock.
Yeah, like I don't know what it is about Eddie Bravo that triggers Alex so much, but he shows up and the dude just goes completely nuts. Like I've never seen someone go that crazy, and I've seen it in person, but not like on recorded, like a podcast.
It's so funny. It's like a dog when he meets his best friend. Let's play.
Yeah, that's like Alex Jones is like a guy that people would say should be on medication, but I'm so glad that he's not.
Yeah.
Like
get him to drink a little bit and he goes nuts.
Yeah, just give him a joint and a shot of whiskey, and his head will get a little bit fatter, but that's okay.
Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. We can talk about it, like actually other stuff.
Sure.
Let me ask some light questions. Well, we looked at your Twitter, and some people on your Twitter asked a few questions here that stood out to me. Are you formally educated or self-taught? I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say a little both. I have had some experience with college level art instruction. Not a whole lot, but I wouldn't really call that's not what I went to school for. It's just something I did. But for the most part, I am self-taught. I would like to attribute a lot of my inspiration simply to looking at art and studying it from people who I think are insightful and intelligent, and also talented. I think there's a few inspirations that kind of help, I think, most artists to move along, to continue to be motivated to do what they do.
So I guess you can call that passing the torch. I always use the Impressionists as my favorite example, where they inherited a torch from the classicists and, the Salon and all those people. And they changed art, but not necessarily in a bad way. They kind of broke the institutions who weren't allowing them to be artists, professional artists, or regarded as professional. So they just created sort of an alternate marketplace where they made their art next door to the professionals, in air quotes. And the people, the commoners, just liked their art and bought it. And, oh, this is art too. So the kind of stuff that you make and the others is not something that you would have seen in, say, newspapers back when we grew up in the 90s. But now, because of the internet, and really the power belongs to the creators and the audiences, we're able to create our content without asking for permission. And then sometimes here come these guys and gals who try to make us ask for their permission to make their art. It's like, I don't answer to you.
Yeah, like every now and then I get these people coming along on Twitter telling me, I can't do this or that or whatever, and I look at their accounts and I'm just like, who are you? Like,
yeah.
who do you really think you are? To, I don't mean that like who do you think you are, but just really like who do you think you are? Are you somebody important that I need to be listening to? Am I going to lose clout points if I don't pay attention to the fact that you don't like what I do? And what is it, that guy, back to that Mazza guy, when he said that the role of journalists is, first of all, to be gatekeepers. These people want to be gatekeepers. And the fact that there are people out there that are not, they're, superseding the gate. They're not even superseding the gate. Like, I don't even care that other people think there is a gate, because I know there isn't,
Right. I guess they're leaning on the legacy of their profession from the TV days. And then there was maybe 10 years where internet news was a thing, but now YouTubers are dominating the news. Individuals, not companies, where he works. if Mazza was an individual creator, I doubt he would have nearly as much clout as he does now. Whereas you
Agreed.
got guys like Tim Pool, who I like a lot, and then you got the conservative types, Crowder and Shapiro and all those guys. They're crushing it, and they're basically just individuals.
Yeah, it's funny to see how my YouTube recommends have changed so much since so many people gotten kicked off of there. It's like it's all just a bunch of like Tim Pool and Steven Crowder, and I'm like, I didn't really like I knew of these guys, but I didn't really watch them
Yeah.
before. But now since they got rid of all the people I was watching, all of a sudden they're what's left, and now they're going after them too.
Well, there will be eventually, I guess you reach maximum, or I should say critical mass of wokeness. Once you reach that critical mass, you have to basically keep cleansing all the naughty people, or else they'll take over your platform. And that's what
Yeah,
guys like Crowder and Poole and Dave Rubin are doing, or were doing. Guys like Rogan, if they get kicked off, like that's it. YouTube is finished.
totally.
But then wherever those guys go, that's where the people will go. We don't care. I don't care what YouTube is. I care what YouTube does. And any number of websites can do what YouTube does. And I guess they're just every calculation that YouTube makes whenever they try to kick someone off is, will this ruin our platform? Or by getting rid of this person, will we help preserve it for a few more years?
They're playing a very very dangerous balancing act.
Yeah.
Because they got their network effect from these people, and kicking those people off could squash that network effect. And I think they're aware of that, and they are trying to be very careful.
I mean, look what happened to you. Not YouTube. I'm sorry, PewDiePie. Like, how many years in a row was he not included in YouTube Rewind? And he was and is the biggest individual creator, and they just pretend like he's not on the website. And you know, it has become a meme, but it's like you guys don't understand who's back. Like, what is the foundation of your website? What happens when you take the foundation away? It seems that this is a postmodernist. It's both postmodernist and super communist thing to do. Just keep hacking at the foundations of everything that exists, thinking that the structure is going to hold itself up somehow. They don't even believe in hierarchy. So it's like, I'm going to build a foundation for my basement, and then I'll build my house on top of it. They actually are dumb enough to think, I'll get rid of my basement and the house will hold itself up somehow. What are you even like? They actually think that'll work.
Good
I'm
analogy.
sorry. I'm really upset.
Well, don't get upset. Don't get triggered.
I'm so triggered right now. I need to go into my little padded room with, I don't know, fuzzy animal.
You're just sad because your Nazi overlord PewDiePie is being exposed for the terrible person that he is.
I don't know. I want to crack jokes, but I won't.
Well, so you mentioned you were talking a little bit about art history, modern art history.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about what do you think of Dali?
Dali, Salvador Dali. He had talent, but I think he was good. He was in the same school as guys like Warhol and such, and they were expert marketers, and they were good at marketing and viral stuff before viral was a word.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is
because he had two. He went into a different phase, like you kind of mentioned that he knew how to make certain kinds of art popular, but then in the later part of his career, he became a Catholic and started making religious art, which a lot of people don't know about.
Oh.
And that's actually the Dali that I'm incredibly inspired by, not because I'm a religious person, but because of the nature of the symbolism in that art that he did was much deeper. Like he did one painting, I think it was called the Hypercube, which was Jesus being crucified on a hypercube, which was kind of an early exploration of how modernity is trying to destroy tradition. That's kind of one way that I took it, but So that's kind of an interesting thing to explore. I think that it's funny that you say that he was an expert marketer before people really knew what that was.
Well, there have always been personality cults. Maybe I use that word too strongly in this case, but larger than life types of people who live boisterously, and they spend a lot of money, and they walk around, and they go to these uh, I forget the names of those clubs that they used to hang out, but it's like the place to be. They're on the bleeding edge of what's cool, and who knows, like it's so exclusive. And imagine being able to rub elbows with these geniuses and
Hmm.
weirdos, but also genius weirdos. And him and Warhol and those guys were part of the it crowd. Have you ever seen a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune?
Oh, that one. No, I've never seen that.
That Oh man, I give it my highest recommendation. If you like art and stuff and film, it's so inspirational. And they talk about Dali as this mad director who tried to make the Dune film, approached Dali to be in his movie. And he explains a story of how he tried to court Dali to become an actor. And Dali was so intrigued, they started playing this weird game across multiple cities across the world where it's like, I'm going to make you court me in order to be in this movie. And so Dali played this game with him, and I got this picture of just this madman who loved, I don't know, he was, I guess, intoxicated by the game of being famous.
Hmm.
But I can't deny that he had talent, unlike Warhol, who I can't stand, or what's his name? Jackson Pollock. I
I was
can't
gonna
stand
say
him either.
Pollock, and I was gonna get it.
I'm sorry. But like, yeah, these guys considered each other peers, but I don't think like Dali is definitely not one of them. Maybe they were contemporaries, but
Yeah,
Pollock had nothing on him.
yeah,
But I guess that's what we're seeing in that school of deconstructionism. And I got to look up cubism. I never studied it, but maybe this is related. I'm looking at the hypercube. Um, I guess there's this anti-art thing that's been a legacy for decades that we're now sort of trying to turn around, I guess.
hmm.
Um,
Well, in a way, I don't know if like what I'm doing is really playing a part of that cartoonist. Um, it's still very um, what's the word I'm looking for? Minimal,
esoteric. I
esoteric.
do.
I say minimal, you say esoteric.
I have a suspicion, though, talking to you, that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg with you. Um, I wonder over the next, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I have a feeling that whatever this is that you're doing, we haven't seen the end of you. It's just a feeling I get.
That's probably a good feeling.
Let's see what else. Another question that was on here, and you can skip this if you like, is does your family experience and does your family experience any kind of public shaming because of your political views? Do they, and I'll add this, do they even know what you do? Do you keep it secret?
Right? No, I don't keep it secret from my wife. I keep it secret from kind of extended family, but I don't like to keep anything from her. Um, so she's very much aware of what I do, and in fact, she's involved with it.
Oh,
There's a lot of ideas for my comics that come from her, and every now and then she'll get pissed off about something and say, "You need to go after this. You know, you need to
okay.
make a comic about this, and you know, I want it to say this and all that kind of stuff." And
Mhm.
you know, I'll half the time those are my funnier comics, honestly.
Hmm.
But as far as extended family, both of us kind of have a families that come from conservative religious backgrounds. So these sort of things are not that controversial amongst those groups,
Mhm.
even if they might not like the form or the tenor of some of my work. If I were to show them, or if they were to see it, they probably would resonate with the themes and the message. So um, I actually have a younger brother who is getting into edgy comics, web comics, and I'm really tempted to tell him who I am.
Oh my.
But we'll see. We'll see how he develops with that, because I'm kind of trying to guide him and you know, give him some pointers, because he's kind of like where I was 10 years ago regarding this kind of stuff. So yeah, there's not a lot of I don't get a lot of pushback.
Well, that's an interesting kind of. No, he says that he wants to be Spider-Man to you, and you are Spider-Man. And it's
Right.
like, wink, wink.
I'm more of a Captain Marvel.
The old one who gets stomped by the new one. Replaced. You're going to be replaced.
I am.
Actually, this is one of the questions. This is odd. And by the way, if we're timing wise, I don't know if we're near an hour. I usually do an hour, but we can go longer if you like.
Yeah, we can go a little longer.
This sounds, I have these questions written down as sort of general questions just in case, but I think like you would answer this in an interesting way. What is one of, or how do I put this? What are some of the moments in history that you would have wanted to witness in person?
Let's see. What do I care about? I would have liked to have seen the moment on Hitler's body double in the bunker when they told him that he was going to be found dead.
Oh
while Hitler escaped to South America. That would have been a fun time.
What's that show? Finding or Hunting Hitler?
Is that what they called it? Hunting Hitler?
I can't remember, but it was a guy that appeared on Rogan. That's how I found out about it. And he goes to South America and he starts asking around. Like, there's a lot of German people there, and they're inexplicably really rich, in like Argentina and stuff.
Yeah, I thought that stuff was. I thought that was public and known at this point, but maybe not. I'm gonna have to go look it up again. But yeah, I don't know if that's really a serious answer. It's kind of a difficult question.
I'm sorry, I sprung it on you. I just find it fascinating. Like, you could tell a lot about a person by like, they sound like general questions, but like to learn about a person's true nature, it's interesting to.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's another one. Maybe I would have liked to have known what the guys at Tiananmen Square were thinking. That would have been a good one. Not like what are you thinking kind of thing, but just I'm curious what was on their minds. What was their internal motivations to stand up to, the communist machine.
That's interesting. I have another one of these funky date questions that tells you about your personality. I play this game with people. You get to choose 3 superpowers, but I give you 1 nerf at the end. So if you had to choose your 3 superpowers.
Let's see. So I get to pick 3, but you get to remove 1?
I will give you a handicap to one of them, and you get to pick which one of the handicaps you pick.
Okay.
And the real thing, what I'm really trying to do is ask you about your, what could you do if you had these powers or something? For instance, well, I'll tell you afterwards.
Oh, no, for instance?
I don't want to spoil it by telling you what the game is.
Okay.
But basically, you can tell a lot about a person by what powers they choose.
All right. Well, I can, maybe I can start by crossing a few off that I wouldn't want. So invisibility, not important to me because I'm not a pervert. Flight is kind of interesting. I do like that. I might want that. Maybe like Tetsuo level psychic power, which I guess flight is kind of connected to. Super strength. Okay, let's say those. Flight, psychic power, super strength.
Interesting. So part of the game, I guess we are on a time limit. So what I would have done in this case is to pick one of those and give you like a comedic, like for instance, if you want flight, I would choose a nerf of you can only fly 5 miles an hour. Or you can have psychic powers, but you get the crazy headaches that Tetsuo gets, or you have super strength, but you can only have super strength. You can't be gentle with anything. As an example, so that's a fun game to play. If among those weaknesses are any of those something that you would accept?
Well, when you mentioned the flight thing, do you remember the ambiguously gay duo?
Yeah.
You remember how, like, whenever they were flying, the other guy had to be, like,
To hold him.
mounted on top of the back of the other two?
So you have to have some random friend on you at all times.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one.
Okay, so you could fly at any speed, but someone has to be like on you.
But Stone Toss has to be on my back.
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna
We
nerf
can
myself.
ask him next time. Oh, that's funny. All right, so that's basically it. Like you mentioned, you basically understood the game. Like when you said invisibility, you're not a pervert, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tells you about, I guess, the kind of fantasies that a person has, but not in like a creepy way, I suppose. But for instance, I love like stealth video games and sneaky stuff, so I would have picked invisibility because it's fun to that, and like, I don't know, like I like the idea of being able to observe as an artist, especially. I love the feeling of like being having my headphones on and walking around a city and nobody bothers me and I'm just observing. It's like I'm not even there. I like that feeling a lot.
That's a lot of words for
Being a
saying that
pervert.
you're just a pervert. Yeah.
Well, I guess what determines whether we're good or evil is what we do with our powers, not necessarily what powers we have. So that's my counter to you.
That's
Anybody,
fair.
and that's why mutants need to be stopped, because we can't control them. And what I'm trying to say is we comic artists are mutants. We're too
Very true.
powerful and we need to be controlled. That's why put this helmet on. Okay, so I'm looking at my list of questions here. I think we're at about an hour, so I want to ask good ones. People who say no fun allowed. I guess there's nothing more to add aside from like the comment of the no fun allowed types seem to make themselves targets because they're sticks in the mud. In the future of your content, do you see, like, for instance, 2020, I know is going to be a massive escalation. Do you think this, whatever this is that we're doing, and especially you, is it going to get bigger over the next few years? Do you think there's any end to it?
Organically, it would get bigger, but I am concerned with the activity to silence voices on social media. Mm-hmm. With social media being the hub of how people find this content. You know, I have a website, but most people get my stuff through social media. So that's, unfortunately, a lot of that has to do with whether or not Trump is going to do something, which is kind of a hit and miss situation. I think voices need to be protected, and if we did have free speech, then yeah, I think it would be very easy for this stuff to spread. But since we have this corporate nanny state, essentially, it's like a
and they all operate in San Francisco.
Yeah, which is a great place for, you know, conservatives and free speech, and also shit.
I find it so fascinating that they all seem to congregate. Like the opposite of a free, I guess that's what it is. I mean, if you want a free state and you want a free organization, you have a lot of clusters that are maybe, I don't know, you don't want centralization. You want it to be as scattered as possible, lots of competition. Competition breeds excellence, which is why I think, for instance, it's just a freak accident. Like why China and England became so powerful in their day, because they were always fighting and trying to beat their neighbors. Technologically, they needed to get stronger. And eventually they just ended up passing the rest of humanity so fast that they just couldn't be beat. And they ended up, you know, in their time, just that's how technology develops, is competition. And in a funny way, once you have all this conformity happening, there are no competitions for, say, YouTube. Nobody's competing for, oh, well, you get Gab against like Twitter and stuff, and Facebook's falling apart. But it's interesting to see how a party that used to be defined by freshness and new things and progress are now actually becoming conservative, and they're putting themselves in a ivory tower, which is a strange inversion that I'm not sure historically if it's been a common thing.
Well, that kind of goes hand in hand with them not knowing who they are.
Mm-hmm. But they know who their enemies are.
Right.
Or they know what they, let me rephrase. They know who they want their enemies to be.
Yeah. Yeah, they see something they don't like and they go, that's the thing.
Yeah, that's an
Well,
nasty.
like, okay, so I had someone on Twitter the other day who was not a friend, to put it lightly. And they were saying, oh, and was it something along the lines of like, Antifa is only attacking people who have who are literally killing people all the time. It was something like that.
Literally.
And yeah, that's what they think, because yeah, their actual thought process is Nazis killed people all the time. I call this person a Nazi, therefore that person has killed people all the time. So you can see the syllogism they're using to justify their own logic.
They've assigned the group identity to that person.
Correct. And it's all identity politics.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely insane. You can't do that. You can't just tell someone, you know, I say you're a Nazi, therefore you've killed, you know, you, like, what the hell is that? That's the most insane thing I've ever, well, maybe not the most insane, but it's pretty crazy. And that's how their logic operates.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're dealing with someone like that, I mean, humor is really the only way that you have to save yourself, you know?
That's very insightful. I agree. When they become so serious that they're almost murderous, the only thing that's in terms of quelling a crowd, because they say a crowd only has like a 4-year-old's intelligence level.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you can do to stop them is to crack a joke and make them laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Make it seem like they're not as big of a threat as they actually are. Because if you try to defend yourself, I mean, this is true even in the animal kingdom. If I go at, like, let's say a gorilla with my chest out and I'm ready to fight, it might think, oh crap, George has a lot of confidence. He thinks he's going to win this fight. I better back off. Whereas if I cower and run away and try to like no, don't fight me, please. It makes them think that they're dominant, and it makes the crowd think I have something to hide.
Yeah.
Try to back off because no, I don't want this fight. The only what I'm pleased to see in these past few years is like we now know who these enemies are and how they think. It's like, no, screw you. You don't get to tell me, for instance, like you don't get to tell me that I belong to this identity group and I'm not an individual. That's very complex. Even the white man thing, for example, I find especially disgusting. Like whatever they call white men, I don't know what that is, and it doesn't apply to me, I don't think. It's like everybody comes from a very complex background. And they try to say, like, for instance, you have committed these crimes, but not you necessarily, but your ancestors have, and you continue to benefit from their crimes. What I always say is, what do you want me to do about that? And also, it doesn't apply to me. But they don't care for high resolution discussions. They want the lowest possible snack, low resolution, like, no, you're a white man, therefore you're responsible for their crimes. Or I'm a woman, therefore I am oppressed and weak, and I'm not able to make up my own mind about what I want to do with my life. It's one of the stupidest things I've heard of. Like, as if, for instance, like one of the things I want to see more than anything is women creators in comics, but good women creators. Mm-hmm. Nobody in the history of comics, I swear this on my grave, no one has ever told these women, you can't draw comics. They want women creators. The problem is the meritocracy. They want to be able, like they're hiring people who don't know how to make comics to try to make them. Whereas in Japan, women are killing it. They are so good at what they do. So they want to act like there's this repression thing when really what the problem is a lack of talent. And that is, it doesn't apply to just women. It can be anybody. If you don't practice your art, your craft, you're not going to get hired for jobs. This is not an oppression thing. This is a talent thing.
Well, it's kind of sad how that sort of identity worldview can destroy an entire industry in a lot of ways, because like, I don't watch a movie because it has equal representations of all the oppressed minority groups.
Mm.
Like the cast is made up of an eclectic rainbow of skin colors and sexual orientations. That's what these people want to see. That's the kind, they don't care what the content of a movie is. All they care is that all of the identities that they think need to be represented are represented, which is not what makes something good. And that's why when you have all these entertainment corporations shifting into that sort of identity politics mindset, their work just gets worse and worse. And more boring. Like I saw a guy who did a comparison of Captain Marvel in the 80s versus Captain Marvel, like the most recent Captain Marvel comic that came out. And I don't really read comics, but I'm interested in the lore. And it was this thing where, like, in the 80s, there was this complex story that showed how Captain Marvel was like this compelling personality who, even though she was incredibly powerful, deserved your sympathy. And that she wasn't getting it, and that this was a weakness of hers, was that her allies didn't understand a difficult situation she was going through, and that she had to kind of strive through it alone. That was like, this guy was saying, this is a great way to build a character. And then he compared it to the most recent comic, which was literally just a bunch of people saying how much they loved Captain Marvel. It was literally her just going around congratulating herself and other people congratulating her for being so great. And the guy, like, I wish I could remember who he was, give him a plug, but he literally like grabbed the comic, the recent one, and just like crumpled it up and threw it and said, like, this is trash. And it's true. Like, they're that's what they think entertainment is. And I don't think they're actually entertained by this, because one of the things that cracks me up is something that those people love a lot is like The Office, right? The show The Office.
Yep.
And I swear to God, like, I could write some of the jokes in that in my comic, and they would hate the comic that I made, but they would love that joke in The Office.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it has nothing to do with the content. It only has to do with the identity. Like, what is it? There's like an episode where Michael, the boss, is like trying to be Santa Claus, and then one of the women in the office said that she wanted to be Santa Claus, and he called her Tranny Claus. Like, oh, if you want to sit on Tranny Claus's lap over there, or something like that. And I'm like, that's funny. If I did that in my comic, I would get brigaded by a leftist mob.
I guess they want to be able to hate Michael Scott, but they consider him so dumb that he's beneath contempt.
And that's part of it. They define what I intend in my work. They define it in their minds. They could say, oh, well, they're just joking. It was just joking in The Office. They were just trying to make a character you would hate. But I'm not allowed to have that that same perspective. I'm not allowed to present my work in that way, according to them.
Well, that sounds like classic postmodernism, where the meaning of a piece of art is not what the artist intended, but what I interpret it as.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
That is, I've always said this. I hate postmodernism. I think it's a wretched ideology, and I hate their art. Like, the art is actually, how do I put this? The art is the leaves, but the ideology is the tree. So if the art is disgusting and stupid to look at, that's because the tree itself is diseased. So I think postmodernism, like, you see the fruit of postmodernism is disgusting. That's because, like, the art is dumb and stupid. You get a toilet in the middle of an art gallery. It's anti-art. That's
Hmm.
because the ideology itself is broken and infected. So they want to be able to tell you what you meant with your comic,
Hmm.
not even bother asking you what did you mean. No, I'm going to tell you what this means to me. And you're dog whistling. I hate that word so much. Like, again, I'll use an example for me is the OK hand symbol for me, which was, again, the circle game, where they thought, or they said, this is what he meant. Not,
Right.
let's ask him what he meant. Nobody asked me. Nobody. And then they just were happy to run me off the website.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
got that with a comment I made once where I was saying, it was on Twitter. I said something along the lines of like, why do the drag queens get all the attention and the drag kings get none? Um, and so um, to me, that just sounds like chauvinism, you know? That's just like the male patriarchy again. But I had people coming after me about that saying like, look at this idiot doesn't know that drag kings are a thing,
yeah.
right? That was the way that they decided to interpret it. And there's no way to combat that, you know? Those people are going to think whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I made that tweet was partially because I do know that drag kings are a thing. That's the whole point, is that they're not getting any media attention, but drag queens are getting all the attention. That was the point of it, but they decide to interpret it as this idiot doesn't even know that there's such a thing as drag kings. So that just kind of goes to show you the level that we're dealing with, with a lot of these people that don't like this stuff.
Mm. They're happy to mob you afterwards by saying like this is what you meant, and then everybody focuses on that straw man, whereas
Hmm.
the actual energy that you could have spent talking to them and having an intelligent conversation dissipates. We've already been talking about this other mistake for an hour. We don't have any more energy to actually clarify and talk about real meaningful things.
Yeah.
It's like arguing with a 4-year-old. You just can't. They just want to throw a tantrum. I can't reason with you.
So, and I've had a 4-year-old before, so that's kind of part of the reason why I enjoy doing this comic is because the way that you argue with a 4-year-old is to confound them, which teaches them a lesson for one, and then it also is fun for you because otherwise it's a losing game. You don't engage a 4-year-old at their level, but like they'll throw an argument at you, and you just kind of say, "Well, what if pigs could fly?" Or just something like that. You just kind of you throw something back at them that just confuses them, and then they don't know what they're arguing about anymore. And that's kind of I think that's a large part of what I'm trying to do out here. Like I had some person come after me recently who is I don't know where they get this stuff that like I'm sending my followers to like mass flag people or something.
Mhm.
Like, I've never asked anyone to do anything like that. The only time I ask people to do stuff on Twitter is like, hey, I think you should follow this person, or you should support this project, or so. That's all I've suggested people to do. I'm not interested in like mass flagging people,
Yeah.
but it's because somebody called me a retard um, on Twitter, and I know from experience and from the experiences of other people that that's one of the words that Twitter really doesn't like.
Mhm.
You cannot call someone a retard on Twitter and expect to keep your account. You simply can't. I got a 7-day timeout for doing that. And I know it doesn't even have to do, like, you don't even have to report somebody. The algorithm will find it and
Mhm.
it'll, automatically do this stuff. So, so like a bunch of people decided they were going to start calling me a retard because I think I said retard in one of my comics. And I kind of posted a tweet saying, hey guys, like, this is going to get you,
Mhm.
And so they use that as evidence that this guy is mass flagging people, or he's sending his followers to flag people. And then somebody else recently came in there and told somebody that happened, and then that person said, Mr. Pumpkinface is a retard, and then they got suspended, you know, because it's like I don't know this is the world these people have created, and they don't realize that they have to live in it too. that these rules apply to them as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it is. Like arguing at the level of a 4-year-old is like, these people call you a retard. I say, hey, you're gonna get banned. You're gonna get a timeout. You know, like Twitter's gonna get you. And then that happens, and then they don't know what to do. So they're like, oh no, he's mass flagging people. He's sending people. Like I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling you. You know, this is just the way that this is the way the world is. And so you kind of have to treat these situations with that kind of humor, in my opinion. That's what I do anyway.
No, I think that's an incredibly, well, I guess indoctrinated people. They can't seem to think for themselves. They don't let themselves think in some ways. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what if, I always think of Scientology as an example. What if we're not allowed to talk to other people because they might tell us that our religion is wrong? And they just have these giant blockades in their brain where it's like, no, I'm not allowed to go there. Don't go
Mm-hmm.
there. Other people will do the thinking for me. And again, I use Antifa as a perfect example of they're just a bunch of college kids who have been told by their professors for 4 years that there are these bad guys who exist, and let's go get them. And then I drew a strip where basically they're just a bunch of little kids, and then they clock someone over the head, cause fires, and then they go back to their professor and like go back and breastfeed
Mm-hmm.
because they can't think for themselves. They're just being sent to do things. And what's worse is that society, I don't like to use that word even, the public eye is not on the leaders of these groups. Like back in the day, there was By Any Means Necessary. Do you remember when the culture war was flaring up real bad 2 years ago? There was a
Mm-hmm.
woman in, I think it was the Portland area. She was a professor, and she was basically advocating for, like, screaming in the streets, like, let's go get these guys. And anyway, it was right after Black Lives Matter, and they were basically saying like attack cops.
Mm-hmm.
They were advocating for all kinds of psychotic violence, and it's like we just have to destroy society by any means necessary. Anyway, but yeah, the 4-year-old thing, they don't think for themselves, but they sure like breaking things. But look, I mean, if humor is the best, like, you don't meet resistance unless you're onto something. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the reason that you and others are meeting such strong resistance is because you actually are touching on one of their weak points. Maybe they don't want you to think that, but every time you make a joke, taking away their thunder, taking clout away from them, making them look ridiculous, that takes power away from them. And they will eventually either collapse or they'll be able to take down their enemies. But the more enemies they take down, the stronger the opposition gets. So they're almost playing a losing game.
Yeah, I just hope I'm not one of the ones they take down.
That's the freakish and scary thing that's going on right now, I guess.
Because I do like doing this.
I mean, I don't blame you even for, you got your anonymity, and thanks for coming on. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, look, what I always say with this show is that I don't, how do I put this? I don't believe in any sort of like censorship, or like, everybody should and ought to have a voice. So say you're a controversial creator, why not talk to you and get to pick your brain? I don't know. Silencing my opponents seems to be like the stupidest, most, it's like shooting myself in the foot. And I'm not even saying we're opponents. I'm sure we agree on many things. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
disagree on things. I don't know. But silencing your opponents is one of my recurring themes in my life, I suppose, is I don't want to use the word because I might get in trouble with YouTube, but it is a losing game. It will make you look like the bad guy. Censorship is not the tool of someone who is enlightened. You instead have to argue and discuss. Violence is the final, how do I put this? When you see Antifa being violent, they have given up the argument. They have nothing left to say. So they've basically escalated it to the final level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because they're doing a little bit of violence doesn't mean they can't do more later. So I would not be surprised in 2020 if we see like full-blown riots and, like, stores being busted up and Knights of Broken Glass, except the irony is that they're doing it.
I like that. I've seen the justification of, well, we haven't killed anyone yet, so what's the big deal? Oh, that's a great way to approach life.
Jeez.
Which
Well,
basically is, that's a way of excusing themselves for killing people down the road.
I mean, even CNN has been saying the recent attacks have been over the line, I guess because it was a journalist. But maybe, I don't know, maybe the tide is turning a little bit. I guess 2020 will be the real, I guess a year from now, when the debates have started and the re-election is in question, that's when we'll find out how bad this is going to get.
Yeah.
So I guess until then, people like yourself and others have carte blanche, it almost seems like, just to keep making content that people laugh at or controversial stuff. I feel like I've been talking too much. I'm sorry.
Well, that's cool.
Gosh. There's more I want to ask, but I think we've done an hour and a half, so I think we can end the conversation in this direction. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we sign off?
I'll just make this final point to love everyone, love yourself, be tolerant. Love is the answer. All you need is love. Love is a many splendored thing. Mm-hmm. I'll just end it with that.
All right. Well,
that was weird.
Everyone can take that to mean whatever they think, I suppose. On one hand, I'm tempted to laugh, and on the other hand, I'm like, yeah.
What he's really saying is you need to hate everyone.
Love is awesome. People. At the end of the day, for me, man, it's just jokes, dude.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. I guess some
just
people
kidding around, you know.
But maybe that's the exact antithesis. That is the weak point of these super serious people. But I don't know. I don't think I can be stopped.
You cannot be stopped. You shall not be stopped.
No. But honestly, the more that we're punished, the more people are going to step forward and do this. So
yeah, that's very true.
Well, now they have us talking, and I'm sure that some people are not going to be happy with that. But look, the bottom line is there's all kinds of people make cartoons and comics, and for me, the name of the game is fun, and I love comics as a medium. There is no law anywhere that says someone is not allowed to make comics, and if you make a comic that I like, then I owe you a huge thanks.
Well, I know I like yours.
And I like yours too. Even the spicy stuff, man. It makes me laugh. Laughter, that was fun. People used to laugh back in the day. Anyway, so I guess we've been going long enough. I want to thank anyone who's listened this far. Of course, I want to thank my guest, Mr. Stone. I keep getting you guys mixed up. No, you know what it is? It's because of everyone who uses cartoon avatars, it's like they're all the same people. Mr. Pumpkin. I'm so sorry, dude.
I'm Mr. YOLO comics Stoneface.
You're all the same person if you all really think about it.
It's true. We're all schmorky in the end.
Man, I don't know.
Let's end it there.
All right, let's end it there. I'm sorry again. Thanks everybody for listening. Honestly, share this around if you like it, with the message that it's good to talk to people, even if you do, maybe they make spicy content, but maybe by getting to know each other, we'll realize we're not so scary and maybe we're not so different. That's the thesis of this channel and my interviews. So I'm going to stop here. If you want to stay on for just another minute, I want to say bye.
Sure.
Thanks to everybody again. See you next time.